Welcome back to the United Pubcast for a bit of a Friday night pint and Manchester United versus Newcastle United preview. As you can see, only one of us is here. Larry should be joining us very shortly, so do be patient for Larry's late arrival, but he'll be here very shortly, I am guessing. And just a little bit, it's good to discuss football. It has been a while since Manchester United have played. It probably hasn't been that long, but every international break does sort of draw out and sort of test the patience of us football fans and Man United fans. So it is good to have club football back, and especially here in Sydney with the clocks changing. This weekend, Saturday night, Liverpool play Manchester City, and it's a 10:30 kickoff, and then even better than that, next week when we play Everton in a week's time, that's 9:30 on a Saturday night. So primetime viewing is returning for us Australian Manchester United fans, which is a great thing. Unfortunately, this week is still one of those graveyard shifts of 1:30 on a Monday morning against Newcastle, which will be very tricky for us here in Sydney, but it is the life of a Man United fan. So do appreciate everyone joining us. If you are with us, please do leave a like on the video. That'll be very much appreciated, and I'm sure Larry will join us very shortly. But a little bit of a discussion around all things Man United. Obviously, the Qatar discussion isn't going to go anywhere, the Glazers discussion, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, etc. But then ultimately, here we are as Man United fans. The football is back. We have a huge game against Newcastle, and not often we say Manchester United against Newcastle is one of the biggest fixtures in the calendar. But in terms of the way we sort of value the importance of top four in the run-in for the remainder of this season, I would have to say, I know we play Chelsea and I know we play Tottenham during the running, but ultimately you have to think probably this is the biggest game left. Now, I know we could have an FA Cup semi-final, Europa semi, or potentially a final at Wembley or away in the Europa League, which are going to be huge games, and obviously they will be huge games. But in regards to the Premier League fixtures at the moment, I think this is the biggest game left, because I can't comprehend this, but it is the fact I have just seen the ladder in front of me. If Newcastle beat us, they move ahead of us. Like, forget Tottenham, Newcastle will move ahead of us into third place if they beat us this weekend. Doesn't matter about the goal difference. They have a better goal difference than us. So if they do win, they move ahead. And that's crazy. And look, fair play to them, credit to them. They're obviously having a very good season, and maybe our season's maybe not as good as we do think it is. Now, I think we are having a very good season. But that goes to show you how close this is. And we were maybe a few weeks ago looking ahead towards potentially a Premier League title. Now, that wasn't to eventuate, of course, unfortunately. However, now we do have to look behind us. Now, I think we are safe. I think if we do perform well, we're fine, and I think we can get over the line and sort of secure that top four qualification. But ultimately, we do have to be careful. Now, yes, the thing that does work in our favour, in my opinion, is Liverpool, Tottenham. You could throw Newcastle in there. Maybe their form has turned around a little bit. But clubs like Tottenham, you can even throw Brighton in there, to be honest. But Liverpool, even Chelsea to an extent, I know they're completely out of the race, but ultimately, as the name of the club in regards to the chase for European spots, Chelsea are there. They're doing everything they can not to make it. Well, it's one of those things. I'm sure we've been in that position as well. When we've sit around fourth, fifth, or sixth trying to get that Champions League spot, we've probably been that club who are throwing away opportunities to climb the ladder. This season, that looks like it's going to be Tottenham, Liverpool, Chelsea, etc. Hopefully even Newcastle. So we still need to be nervous, still need to be wary of our chase for top four. But ultimately, I think we are in a good position, and we've done a lot of the groundwork so far to sort of try and secure that. But I think if we win this, I wouldn't say guarantee top fours, but pretty much guarantees top four if we do win this match. If we get a point, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think a point here is a good result, probably for both teams. I think Newcastle will definitely take a point. And ultimately, in the course of the season, looking back at when you play your 38 games, looking back away at Newcastle in regards of a battle for top four, I think a point away at St James's Park at the end of March, I think ultimately that's probably a good point. Now, obviously, if Manchester United turn up and perform well, obviously you back us to get 3 points, which is hopefully the case. And I do expect us to get 3 points, and I do want us to go for the 3 points, but I don't think it'll be a disaster if Manchester United come away with a point. But I think Larry will be joining. It looks like he just popped in now. So I'll throw Larry on if he's here with us. Good evening, Larry.
Evening, mate.
Evening, mate. Sorry if that echo isn't coming through. I haven't checked something. My audio is a little bit different from last week. I should have checked before, but Larry wasn't with us. It should fix up now. It'll be better on my end. But Larry, it is a Friday night. I have just been at the pub. I've returned from the pub with good mate of ours, Ian, from over in Perth. So I've had my pint already. Talk to me about your Friday.
Well, I'm pumped Manchester United back in a couple of days, mate. That's where the excitement is.
Now I've got you on mute.
Hey?
All better.
Well, Manchester United are back in action, mate. I don't know if you've been following that, but that's what I'm pumped for. Skip all the transfer talk, skip all the Marcus Rashford contract talk, skip all the ownership details. I mean, that's going to happen in the background. I'm in love with the 90 minutes on the football pitch, and it's been far too long since we've seen the boys run out. So that's what I'm pumped for. Bring on Newcastle.
Well, I was just saying in regards to the importance of this match, we think Manchester United, Newcastle, and there is a historic nature to this match, obviously a big sort of rivalry in the 90s, and Newcastle are a big club. Now they have taken a new step into potentially a far more successful club in the future. But ultimately, United Newcastle has just been a good Premier League fixture, just a run-of-the-mill fixture, but a good one people look forward to. But now in regards to both teams' ambition, this is a huge game. I said to the listeners, obviously, we do play Chelsea later and we do play Tottenham later. But this Newcastle match away at St James's Park, okay, it's not a title race. A trophy's not up for grabs. We beat Newcastle to a trophy, thank God, about a month ago. But in my opinion, Larry, this is now, yes, we could have a Europa League final or FA Cup final, of course. But as things stand now, this is the biggest game left in our season, I think.
It's massive. In terms of the Premier League, it's massive. And you look at our fixtures and the run in home, Newcastle's a big game. And I think it's a game that Manchester United need to win. I think top four, we were looking comfortable there for a little bit, weren't we? But after back-to-back winless matches, United need to bounce back, Tom. And now what a way to stamp your authority in the top four by beating someone who is competing with us and has been in that race for a little while. I think Newcastle have had the wobblies. We've obviously gotten over them in the League Cup, but it's a must-win game.
Yes, do you say must-win? Like I was just saying there, I think I want to win, of course, but I'll probably take a draw. I probably won't be happy with the draw on Monday morning at 3:30 before I'm heading off to work. But at the moment, I think after 38 games, if we sort of have a sort of top four season and we have that trophy in the bag and we get top four, I think ultimately a draw away at St James's Park off the back of an international break with big fixtures ahead. Ultimately, I don't think it's sort of must win.
I think it is, if I'm being honest, because the thing is, if United, the teams around us, right, you can't guarantee what other teams do, but you can control your own form. And I think United have a positive run in home, but if you lose to Newcastle, I think it gets a little bit hairy. I think Liverpool's form, while have been inconsistent, are still in the fight. And then I'm looking at the table now. So you got Tottenham 1 point behind us, but we've got 2 games in hand. So I think we can create a good chasm there if we can win our games in hand.
Newcastle, which is crazy, Newcastle go ahead of us if they win. Look at their goal difference. They go ahead, which is baffling to me, but the facts are the facts.
Well, that's the thing. And do United really want to be going in a battle? You have to remember, United are fighting on multiple fronts at the moment. We've got the Europa League that we're going deep into, FA Cup. We're obviously into the semi-finals. This squad fatigue is still a major issue. Now, Rashford obviously had a knock, which seems apparent. It looks like he did have a knock. But a lot of these players still went away to international duty, and the fatigue of this squad isn't going to slow down. So I think get the win against Newcastle, then you wonder, can we rotate a little bit, whether it be in a cup game or so forth. If we lose, then Ten Hag's going to be back in the same position, playing his stronger side week in, week out.
Well, just a point you brought up there, and I want everyone in the live chat to answer this question because I have no idea, and I should know as a Man United fan, but please do let me know in the comments below. I know Fred didn't travel to Brazil. Did Anthony? I'm not sure if Anthony was included in the Brazil squad. If anyone does know the answer to that, let me know because I'm sure that'll potentially influence my starting 11, which we'll bring up in a little bit. But George, good to see you in the live chat, and SJ, good to see you. I'll take a draw right now, especially without Casemiro. Yeah, well, we'll get into the team selection in regards to, obviously, that does throw a bit of a spanner when Casemiro is not involved. I think we have seen how important he is. But actually, the points actually prove that sort of statement of that theory quite incorrect. In terms of our results without Casemiro, they're quite good compared to the results with Casemiro, which is baffling. But football is a funny old game in terms of how those
Anthony did travel.
Anthony did travel. Okay, so look, Jadon Sancho, that'll be interesting. Who plays on the right? It'll be interesting. Eric Ten Hag does have a bit of a selection headache. But is there anything else in terms of coming off the back of the international break, looking ahead to this game, Man United related, whether individuals or collective, you do want to touch on? Because ultimately, individuals in regards to when they were away on international duty, the ones who were there actually did quite well. You look at Marcel Sabitzer, unfortunately picked up potentially a little bit of a knock, but looks like he'll be okay. He scored 2 goals for Austria. Scott McTominay scored 4 goals for Scotland, 2 of those against Spain. Luke Shaw unfortunately got sent off, but that's probably a good thing for Manchester United. So ultimately anything off the back of the international break that did catch your eye?
Not really, if I'm being honest, mate. I will say credit to McTominay. I think he's obviously shown his goal scoring feats, and I've seen some laughable comments around McTominay being our number 9. I gotta say, Twitter and people's lack of knowledge about players. I saw, I think it was you, I think it was yourself on your Twitter. Someone was saying, "Oh, McTominay played as a striker coming up." I'm like, he played less than 10 games as a striker in the under 18s. Like, what? Sorry, it was in the under 23s. What are you talking about?
That was a weird season. I remember that. And you look, yes, when we got MUTV for free in Australia, I watched far too much of the youth football. And that season in the 23s, Manchester United didn't have a striker. Jose Mourinho neglected the need for the reserve striker, said, no, you're not going to get that. Not going to bring a striker in. You're going to sort of rotate the players. And ultimately, Demi Mitchell played 5 or 6 games up front. Our left back in the 23s played striker. Matty Willock, who was Scott McTominay's partner in midfield, he played up front. They literally did it on a rotational basis. Remember when you were a young kid and it was alphabetical order who was going to be goalkeeper the next week? That was what the under-23s were doing that season. Scott McTominay had a few games up front. He definitely wasn't a striker. So that is one of those weird sort of footballing theories amongst Manchester United fans. He was always a bit of an attacking midfielder, but yeah, definitely never a striker. But you say that in regards, obviously it's tongue-in-cheek. Okay, McTominay's our new number 9. A chance falls to someone. Who do you want it to fall to, Weghorst or McTominay?
Can I say, I think actually, I'm going to laugh at me here.
I think McTominay is actually a good finisher.
I do. It's one of his. It's a strength to his game potentially.
It is. Well, the reality is he plays quite further back, so he doesn't really get himself into opportunities to shoot. But when McTominay is in the range, he gets shots off on target.
Him and Fred actually sort of they pop up with goals, or when they're in those areas, both of them.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think Fred's got 7 goals so far this season, so it's his best goal scoring season for Manchester United. And McTominay, for whatever reason, when he leaves Manchester United, when we think of McTominay in years to come, it's always going to be the double against Leeds. I think that's just going to be the performance that stays in the mind. And look, Weghorst is a number 9. And the thing is, it's not as simple as putting the ball in the back of the net. There's movement, positioning, back to goal play. We've got no evidence to suggest McTominay can do any of those things, Tom. So while I admire the creativity of social media, it has to be about Weghorst all day long. It's not even
it was just the question of a chance falling to someone, not the overall play of a striker and the contribution to the team. It was just in terms of some of the chances falling to Weghorst. I'm not saying put McTominay in there in place of Weghorst, of course not. Obviously, you need that striker to be able to get the ball into those areas to create those chances. But ultimately, if you're playing a black and white game where one person bet your house on someone to score a chance, at the moment in regards to form, it would be Scott McTominay. But I do think Weghorst will play through the middle. But before we get into starting 11, just 2 players who I don't know if they're dominating the headlines, but in terms of they're dominating a lot of our thoughts in regards to the run in this season. Anthony Martial, potentially a striker in terms of taking those chances, and Christian Eriksen. Now, we haven't seen them for a while. They are looking like they're on the mend, and they're both back in training and playing for Manchester United, 2 very different things, especially under the way Erik ten Hag is sort of utilising players coming back from injury. So before we get into start 11, just your latest thoughts in and around Christian Eriksen and his sort of pending return, and ultimately throw Anthony Martial into that Weghorst debate.
There's no debate for me. If Martial's fit, Martial plays. And I wouldn't normally be so concrete about that, but the reality is, mate, I'm sorry. I admire Wout Weghorst's work rate. I think the commentary from people saying he's doing a good job is laughable. I got to be honest. I'm sorry. I admire that he's available. I admire that he works hard. Never going to criticize him for putting in a shift, but just such a lack of quality. He's got a good ball in him. I'll give him that. I think his link-up play is decent without being brilliant. Martial has it over him in every aspect of the game. There is nothing that Weghorst does other than being more tall than Martial that I would say is better than him in anything.
Try not to put a sort of ownership hat on this in regards to, well, if it's the Glazers, this is one answer, and if it's Qatar, it's another answer. Try to leave that out of the discussion at the moment. Just say no owners, you and me are owners. Okay, we have no influence over the recruitment of football department. Next season, does Erik ten Hag make Weghorst permanent, or does he leave back to Burnley?
He goes back to Burnley for me. That caliber of player, again, with all due respect, that caliber of player is not Manchester United quality. He's not a backup. If you think of what Manchester United backup strikers have been, I'll name a few for you. Dimitar Berbatov scored 5 against Fulham. Carlos Tevez
Wouldn't call
Who
it.
was
I know what
that?
you mean. I wouldn't call him backup, but I know what
Solskjaer and
category you're
Sheringham
talking.
came off the bench.
Solskjaer and Sheringham, I'd put in that discussion.
Yeah.
Chicharito, players like that.
These players are double-digit strikers. Val Weghorst has 2 goals for Manchester United, none in the Premier League.
I don't think, he hasn't scored in the Premier League, and look, fingers crossed he can get a goal against Newcastle. But ultimately, you say you throw Martial in, and I tend to agree. But then ultimately, I've sometimes fallen on the side of the fence. Well, Martial's going to be injured next week against Everton. Don't you give Weghorst a chance now to maybe get a goal against Newcastle so he's confident against Everton? Now, that's maybe the
How many
pessimist.
games do you give him a chance to score a goal, though?
Yeah, but ultimately, look, I agree. But ultimately, then going back to Anthony Martial, throwing him straight in, you say throw him in. Okay, I agree. His injury record, is it right to throw him back in, or do you just give him half hour off the bench?
It's a difficult one. I could see both sides. I think against Newcastle, who are quite defensively compact, you need your best footballers. When you're versing compact teams, you need your best footballers on the pitch. You're going to beat them by a bit of brilliance, by a player who's good in tight spaces, and that's what Martial is. I get it, and I think as good as Rashford has been this season, I think he goes to another level when Martial's with him. They have a good chemistry, those two players. And I would love to have seen Rashford post-World Cup with Martial fit, because I think for all the plaudits he's rightfully deserved, I think Rashford is not double the player, but I think he is much more effective when Martial's there. And I take your point, and being available, there's credit in doing that. But I mean, I'm available. Should I start for Manchester United?
I completely agree. However, I cast your mind back to our last goal against Newcastle. Without Weghorst, a little bit of nice work and sort of set Marcus Rashford through. So ultimately, in terms of, I agree 100%. But in terms of what Weghorst does, in terms of we're in quite good form, take away the 7-0 defeat at Anfield, we've been quite good under Erik ten Hag. And Weghorst, I think he started 18 or 19 games in a row, which is crazy. Ultimately, okay, he's maybe not giving us what we want as fans in terms of finishing those chances and maybe not looking too silky. But in regards to our form and maybe the way, again, maybe not what we see, but in regards to ultimately contributing to the team on and off the ball, he is giving Erik ten Hag something. So I agree in terms of I would throw Anthony Martial back if fit, because I think he makes us a better football team. But Erik ten Hag has made decisions which I don't agree with, which proves me wrong. So I think he might make a decision here where I wouldn't agree with. I'd say Martial. He plays Weghorst, and ultimately Erik ten Hag proves me wrong every single week. Thank God he does. And I just think another situation where he would actually go Weghorst.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate, mate. I'm a little bit split on this one. I think if Martial, I don't think either of those players will be at Manchester United next season. And I put this in the context of right now. And I think Manchester United like scoring goals. We struggle to score goals. When Rashford doesn't score, we struggle. And the last time we put 3 or 4 goals in a game was against Real Betis in the Europa League, granted. But again, Rashford scores, Antony scores. But if Antony's really struggled in the Premier League, and I think there's something in that. I think if I look at Antony's performance, he does better in Europe because it's a slower style game. And again, a bit of Iron Robin about him. When he's brilliant at one thing, he's brilliant at that one thing, and he can smash it. But in the Premier League, he's really struggled. This is a Premier League game. This is a game against a team that's, I believe they've got the best defense in the league, Newcastle. They don't concede a lot of goals. And that's the thing. I think when we versed them in the League Cup, I think it was a bit of because it's a cup final, there's a pressure that comes with that. When it's a league game, it's one of the 38 matches you're playing every single in the season. So it's a different pressure. And that's why I think while he did play well against Newcastle, again, I'll come back to you need your best players on the pitch. And that's why I tend to think put Martial there if he's fit. I think we need to start fast. The longer the game goes, when Newcastle don't concede, they grow in confidence. You want to score an early goal, and I think our best chance of doing that is if Martial's fit. I got to say, though, on Martial, do you think there's more than meets the eye with this? He's been training for a little while, but he's still not available. Then he looked like he was close. Ten Hag said he was going to be available for one game. I think it was Southampton, wasn't it? And then he just wasn't. And
there's been a few interesting. I remember Casemiro when he came in, and now it was maybe McTominay was sort of not doing enough to be dropped. So it was Casemiro's slow introduction, but then there was a few others. Obviously the Jadon Sancho issue, which has always been there sort of thing. So I think there's always Erik ten Hag does have a unique style of sort of introducing players for whatever reason, maybe a little bit different to our fans' needs. So, and look, there might be something there. There might absolutely be nothing there. It might actually be sort of really concerned around sort of him breaking down and a fitness issue. I'm not sure. But in saying that, I haven't included him in my starting 11. I'll bring up my starting 11 and you bring up yours in a little bit. My starting 11 here in regards to back four picks itself. Now, Lisandro Martinez is travelling back from Argentina. I would like to think he's available. If he's not, obviously you throw Harry Maguire or Victor Lindelof in there, but I think it will be, fingers crossed, Lisandro Martinez. However, the last time he came back from Argentina, it took him a few weeks to get ready. So fingers crossed he's sober on his flight back to Manchester or flight back to Newcastle, wherever he does land. But back four pretty much picks it. So I think just off the back of the League Cup final the other week or about a month ago, Diogo Dalot started and had a bit of a tricky time against Alan St. Maximin. I'm not sure who's going to line up on the left for Newcastle. But I just think defensively, obviously away from Newcastle, I think I could see us defending a little bit more. So I would go Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I won't lose any sleep if it's Diogo Dalot. The midfield is very interesting. Obviously, we don't have Casemiro, so obviously Casemiro's not there. Eric Ten Hag, whatever your thoughts, Eric Ten Hag's replacement for Casemiro, whether we agree or disagree, is Scott McTominay. He doesn't pick Fred in regards to directly replacing Casemiro, so I think it will be Scott McTominay. And ultimately, while in a different position, just the individual, how can you not include Scott McTominay? 4 goals in 2 games and 2 of those against Spain. I think simply just for his confidence, you have to include him. I'd like to include him in a different area of the pitch. Unfortunately, I think it will be in the 6, but ultimately off the back of his form for Scotland, you do have to throw him in there. Sabitzer, look, I wouldn't be shocked if Sabitzer is carrying a little bit of a knock and sort of eased back in. That obviously throws McTominay next to Fred with Bruno ahead of them. I would like to see Sabitzer over Fred. And obviously Bruno Fernandes picks himself. Now, the front three, in my opinion, does pick itself. Again, with Anthony, like Lisandro Martinez, maybe off the back of some travel. Maybe you could play Jadon Sancho if Anthony's not feeling on 100%. But ultimately, I think that front three pretty much picks it. So I'd like to say Anthony Martial. But as things stand, the evidence suggests that Weghorst will be the available one. Anthony Martial won't. Who knows? We'll know that answer now before kickoff. But I'll bring your 11 up, Larry. And there's a big change here. We'll bring it right in the center of midfield. I like it. Do I think it's going to happen? No chance. But I'd like to be proven wrong because I do like the look of it. So talk me through your starting 11. Or is it a prediction or a preference?
I think it's a prediction. And I would be going Eriksen. Again, I come back to the opposition we're versing. This is a team that sits compact, and they're a team that are hard to break down. So Manchester United need game breakers on the pitch. And there's no denying that our best football has come with Christian Eriksen in the center of the park. So if Eriksen's fit, Eriksen plays. And maybe it's not the full 90 minutes. And I maintain that Manchester United need to get an early goal if they can. So with that being in mind, I'm starting him. If he's fit, he plays.
Look, I agree. I want to see him play. I think we sort of cast our mind back to Christian Eriksen's influence at the start of the season. Been absolutely brilliant. Now, yes, there may be 1 or 2 concerns defensively, but ultimately you do want Casemiro to maybe you do want the combination of both of them in there. Eriksen does leave a little bit to be desired in regards to the defensive output, but through no lack of effort, just his physical attributes. But Eriksen has been brilliant, and he has been a miss. Now, while results have stayed quite steady without Eriksen, obviously in terms of the football we want to play, especially coming out from the back. Now, Eriksen's not a number 6, but he definitely does help that transition from the back 4 to the front. Ultimately, I do want to see him play, but I put him in the same category of Anthony Martial in regards to, okay, if they're fit, you want to play them, of course, because you want your best footballers out there. But ultimately, I do think we do have a big run in this season. We've got FA Cup semi-finals, potentially later stages of the Europa League. Yes, Newcastle is a big game, but ultimately, you want them available for the sort of, if Newcastle's a 9 and a 10 out of 10 big game, you want the players available for the 6 and 7 out of 10 big games. So I would like to sort of stay clear of starting Eriksen. I think SJ brings the point up here. I can't see Eriksen playing, much less starting. I don't even know if he'll be involved. I'd love to see him involved off the bench. Just a hunch with no information. I don't even think he'll travel. I don't think he'll be involved in the matchday squad. I think Anthony Martial will. But I'd love to see Christian Eriksen. I just don't think that will happen. But your other one there, obviously not playing Anthony for, you can sort of say the reason, but in regards to potentially switching Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford, I agree and disagree at the same time. Let's say they were the 2 options and you had to play one on the left, one on the right. I agree with playing Jadon Sancho on the left over Marcus Rashford, but I don't agree with playing Marcus Rashford on the right. So it's a tricky one. I'm not sure where I sit on that, but I'm just your thinking.
Well, I actually did intend for Rashford to be on the left, Tom. But
my bad. Well, when I put this graphic together, that's my fault. Okay, so switch Marcus Rashford to the left, Jadon Sancho to the right. I think Jadon Sancho should play in his best position, which is the left. So that's my disagreeing point.
I think Rashford is our best player at the moment. And with him being our best player, you got to let him play in his best position. I'm all for finding a way for Sancho to evolve and get more comfortable and integrated into the squad. The reality is with Sancho, he's not taking his chances. I think we've seen glimpses of his ability, and the ability's there. That's the thing, and that's why you don't write him off. But he's not taking his chances, Sancho.
Is he? Look, I tend to agree in terms of just my outlook as a fan. In terms of when I'm watching the match, okay, Jadon Sancho gets the ball, nothing quite there. Then Rashford gets the ball, he goes past the player and scores a goal. Why can't he do that? So I do get that feeling regarding Jadon Sancho. Ultimately, that we treat him, I wouldn't say unfairly, but not even so much expectations. But in terms of we're kind of forgetting what he's actually providing the team in regards to he is keeping. I don't want to sort of overhype keeping things ticking over sort of thing, and don't want to sort of celebrate players playing it safe and keeping it safe sort of thing. But ultimately, in regards to the balance of the team, is Jadon Sancho getting a little bit of a hard run by fans in regards to, yes, we do need more, of course. We want him to go past players, create, score goals, be involved. But he's not like, I don't want to compare him, different position to Harry Maguire, but he's not putting in absolute disaster performances and sort of costing the team. So I'm just thinking in regards to Erik ten Hag, well, he's sort of in and out of the team. He's a constant. He's always in and around it. So Erik ten Hag is sort of seeing something in him.
He's an interesting one, Sancho. I don't think it's all his fault. I think and my position's changed just because, I like to watch the football match and I like to look at how do Manchester United set up and how are those players deployed. And I think Sancho is, I don't want to say struggling. I think he's still adjusting to the Premier League. I think that the speed of the game is something he struggles with. And the other side of it, so if I just look at him, he still doesn't look quite fit to me. He just doesn't look like he's got the capacity to go up and down the pitch constantly. So I think that's hurting him. And the other facet of that is if United were dominating the ball the way Manchester City were, I think he'd kill it. I think if you put him in Manchester City's team in the wide areas, I think he destroys Premier League sides. But the way United are set up at the moment, maybe this is the evolution of Ten Hag's football team. Maybe hopefully next season.
Do you think that's why Erik ten Hag kind of utilised him in midfield, or not in midfield, but in that number 10 role a little bit more than we have seen in the past? He's kind of doesn't have that sort of burst out in wide areas. He kind of uses him in the middle.
Not that player. He's not that player. And you're right in the sense of us as fans need to stop expecting that of him. He's not a burst. He doesn't. I think he's got a good top speed, but I don't think he's explosive. So I think expecting him to beat a player with a bit of pace just isn't his game. It's as simple as that. You can't create speed that you don't have. So, but what he is good at is tight areas, 1-2s. And I think when we become a side that's more possession-based, I think you'll see the best of him. But it's on him to also get himself up to fitness because I don't think that's there at the moment.
It's a weird one. I was thinking that because I share the same feel in regards to Jadon Sancho. That is a perception I have in regards to fitness. But I look back are we not lazy as football fans, but we do look at, let's throw Luke Shaw into this discussion. Just the body shape, you think, oh, he's carrying a little bit of weight, but then ultimately Luke Shaw...
Has he played one 90-minute game for Manchester United? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, that's the look. I'm never good. I'll make one thing clear on this podcast. I'm never good with stats in regards to recognising numbers, whether someone's goals, appearances, or how many minutes they play. But that is one thing I remember that always popped up with. Who was the one player who never played 90 minutes? Anderson, always around his fitness. I think he played a handful of games, a handful of 90 minutes throughout his time at United. So that was obviously a thing, and it could be. I'm not saying I'm not saying he's great, has a great fitness sort of pedigree, but ultimately I just think sometimes I question Luke Shaw, but then ultimately that's just a visual. I then look at Luke Shaw's numbers and his output and I think, well, that's just a visual. He's actually proven me wrong. So with Jadon Sancho, I do get that sense that he's a little bit heavy. Then I don't know, is that just my eyes playing tricks on me, or are numbers kind of back that up?
I don't think Sancho is heavy, mate. That's the thing. I don't look at him and think he's heavy. I don't see him getting up and down the pitch. So if you look at body type, I don't think he's too different from Bruno. Yeah. I really don't. I just think that Bruno's got a high cardiovascular capacity at the moment, and Sancho simply doesn't.
Bruno's tank. He's engine. He's
phenomenal.
Not enough beyond. I was thinking of the other week. I forget what game it was. Might have been Betis. I forget. In terms of box to box and sort of making sort of crucial not match winning, but crucial sort of actions at both ends of the pitch, like within the space of 20 seconds. Like he's literally like, we can talk about presses and sort of stuff like that and sprints and ground covered, but ultimately just in terms of moments, like he's there. And look, we can have genuine discussions about Bruno as a player in regards to where he should play, how he can improve, what strengths, what weaknesses, etc. But his effort level, so you just have to look at it. Should be the minimum expectation. I understand that, but ultimately, when someone does provide it, he does deserve, and he does get a lot of credit, but he does get a lot of hate as well. But for that, it is a huge strength. We look at passing and creativity and goals. A huge thing is his work rate.
Well, on average, and this dates back to 2020, he covers more than 10 kilometers per match. Yeah. So it just, and when let's really complicate this. He's played more minutes. 3 times a week. He's played more minutes than any other player in world football.
I think that may be what adds to it. Not just the work he puts in, but then you multiply that 3 times a week. I think that's what makes it more impressive.
I really worry about Bruno, and again, I come back to this summer. I think is so important because not so much for getting first choice player. I think there are 3 positions United need to upgrade in. Outside of that, it's about building the depth. And I just think at the moment, we cannot be in this position in 12 months' time. You and I need to be able to come on here and say, there is a clear and obvious choice for a backup number 10. There is a clear and obvious choice for Casemiro to be rested. These conversations need to be able to be had next season, because if they're not, we're not going to achieve what we want to achieve as a football club.
Do we say that? I was on a Newcastle podcast the other day discussing Scott McTominay and saying, well, does Newcastle bring in Scott McTominay for £30 million and have a discussion around, well, are you just bringing a squad player in for £30 million? If the £50 million player is there, why not just go get the £50 million player? But then I made the point, well, okay, yeah, that's probably better business. Go get the better player for an extra $20 million. But ultimately, that better player then finds himself on the bench. How does he react? So then I'm looking at this discussion again. We want to bring in better quality so we have better plan Bs. But if that plan B is sitting on the bench for 6 weeks, how's he going to react? Is he going to perform? Is he going to be highly motivated for when he gets his chance after 2 months? Is he going to perform like we need to? So I'm just thinking, yes, we need better quality and sort of to come off the bench and look good on paper. But ultimately, does football really work like that? Now, ultimately, I think in terms of the most successful team in recent years has been Real Madrid. I look at their bench, and my God, it's a starting 11 anywhere in the world. So that does prove it right where you do need that quality. But I just think in regards to motives, egos, wages and everything, sometimes it doesn't quite work that way.
Well, let me put it to you this way, mate. Sir Alex Ferguson just got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Long overdue, I might add. Let me give you an example. His last season. Let me remind you who the strikers were for Manchester United. Wayne Rooney just came off scoring 34 goals. 34 goals. Chicharito played that previous season. He was in double digits for goals. Dimitar Berbatov, not prolific that season, but the season prior, I think he scored 22 goals in the 12-13, I want to say. 11-12.
Berbatov wasn't there in the final season. He left when
he wasn't.
Van Persie came.
He wasn't. You're right. He got sold when Van Persie came in. But my point is, there were 3 strikers there who were capable of scoring 20-plus goals. Yeah. He went and bought another striker who can score 30 goals. And the strength of Sir Alex Ferguson was he never thought about buying a bench player. He always thought, what's my strongest 11? I'm going to buy someone even better. And that was his logic. It's interesting because us as football fans always look at it as, oh, well, we rate this player. We rate Casemiro. We rate Luke Shaw. We rate Lisandro Martinez. We'll leave them. We're actually going to buy backups. But I think when you buy backups, the danger you get into is it's almost a sense of false complacency. You're almost dropping the level of the squad unintentionally. What you want to be doing is who can challenge Lisandro Martinez, who can challenge Marcus Rashford. Because when you got players who can compete, that's how you build depth.
Yeah, no, Roy Keane, obviously Ferguson's arch nemesis. Unfortunately, how it's played out often alludes to that in regards to once players get that little bit of success and sort of they feel their spot in the starting 11 is quite safe and secure, they drop a level or two. And ultimately, that is a thing where we've discussed that with Luke Shaw. The moment he has a bit of competition, we get the best performances out of Luke Shaw, etc. I think Thiago Dalot and Aaron Wan-Bissaka performing quite well, and they give him the chance. It's off the back of they know if they perform poorly, they're going to be hooked at halftime and substituted. So ultimately, that is a good thing. Now, before we do move on and sort of start to wrap up the show, a few more of the talking points, so stay tuned. But back to the Newcastle match. A prediction for me, I'd never like to predict this, but I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. And ultimately, I'm not going to sort of lose any sleep over that. I think if United perform well and they turn up, I'm very confident United winning. But ultimately, I just think in terms of the situation, Casemiro out off the back of an international break, Newcastle being a good team, away from home, I think it'll be a 1-1 draw. And I'll hesitantly take that.
Yeah, I don't know. Their form guide's been inconsistent, but they have won their 2 last games, so they'll be coming in confident. And again, St. James's Park, they got a good record there this season. Difficult one. I'm with you. If United manage to get a draw, I think it's a good result. But I'm obviously hoping for a win. I'm being a hypocrite because I said it's must win. And again, it's not must win, obviously, mathematically, but I think if United win, I think top four's all but guaranteed. So it's massive. I'm going to ignore my emotions. I'm with you, mate. I'm going to say it's a draw. I actually think it might be a 0-0. If I think they'll double up on Rashford, and if he doesn't score, I don't see who else is capable at the moment.
Yeah, that's sadly a feeling in terms of just when you look at the numbers and where our goals do come from. When Rashford doesn't score, ultimately Weghorst would come up with a goal.
Hag's presser. I want to know if Martial's playing. I want to know what's going on there. And if
Should be tonight. It should be in a few hours. He usually, now on the weekend, we obviously play. It's Monday morning, unfortunately for us. So yeah, a Friday morning. I'm not sure where the time difference is now, obviously, but a few hours there at Ten Hag. We'll say something that will be interesting in regards to, I don't know if we had a 0 draw under Eric Ten Hag, have we?
Yeah. Against Newcastle last time in the league.
Of course, there you go. Nail at home, 0 draw written in the stars, of course. God, how far we'll come from that? I was having a discussion with Ian at the pub earlier.
Southampton, when Casemiro got sent off.
We're filled with 0 draws. What am I talking about? But a point you made the other week, I was discussing with Ian at the pub today. Ronaldo. Weghorst has started 19 games since he's arrived. He started every game. Just what would have happened? Now, not to say we're probably better with Weghorst and worse with Ronaldo. That's a different discussion. But just Ronaldo's need for minutes and needs for football, what would have happened? It would have been so fascinating. And again, we might be top of the table. We might be 7th. Who knows how that will play out? But it's just sort of cast your mind back to that feeling in regards to his exit. It didn't need to end like that. And obviously we knew that at the time it didn't need to end like that. But looking now, you think, oh, God, could someone better have been in his ear? And what would have this season turned out like for both player and club?
He could have been playing so much football right now. And I don't think what we saw of Ronaldo at the end, he did not fall off that bad. There's no way. He just didn't. He was out of form, but he didn't go from scoring 24 goals 3 months earlier to being absolutely rubbish. No player declines like that. And he's back scoring goals in Saudi Arabia. And I don't care. Look, Saudi Arabia is not the same quality as the Premier League. Of course it's not. But he's scoring, he looks sharp again. He looks match sharp because he's playing regularly. And he wasn't getting, he was playing, he was in and out. He was upset. He didn't have a preseason. And at 38 years of age, I think that's going to impact you. Yeah. So, and he alluded to that. It's probably the only thing I'll give him credit with the Piers Morgan interview. He alluded to not having a preseason. I agree, mate. He didn't have a preseason, and that's hard.
I think he came out last week and sort of alluded to the fact they're talking about that interview, and he said, "Look, when I'm sometimes when you're at the top," and he was alluding to both the club and player. I think it was a bit of a metaphorical stance, saying when you're at the top, sometimes you don't see what's below. He was talking about the mountain sort of thing, and that was alluding to him saying, "Yeah, maybe I didn't sort of appreciate sort of what was happening around me, and I was sort of where head was in the clouds, and it was a little bit of a self-reflection on him not sort of handling things in the best way." Now, ultimately, he's going to address that later in his sort of when he retires, sort of in more detail. But I think he sort of, again, went to say, okay, it's a shame how it ended, but I'm better for it now. I learned from that. Now, a lot of the quotes were taken out of context, saying I'm a better man now that I've left Man United. It wasn't so much that. It was saying I've learned from that experience. That was not ideal. I'm better for it now. So, look, that's a discussion for another day. We'll have at the end of the season in regards to Weghorst and Ronaldo. Fingers crossed Weghorst gets his Premier League duck out of the way and sort of fires United or 2-0 victory like in the League Cup final a couple of weeks ago. But, Larry, obviously, where do you want to go before we wrap up the Friday night point? We've got all things Qatar, so Jim Ratcliffe, so the Glazers, got the Premier League in general. Obviously, we're still sort of 50-50 on who we want to win, City or Arsenal. My opinion changes every couple of hours on that.
Arsenal bang on, man.
Oh, no, Arsenal winner. I've come to terms with Arsenal winning. My preference, I'm not sure where I sit on it. But just anything else in regards to the ownership, football in general, or Man United things you do want to touch on?
Did you realise Arsenal are 8 points clear of City right now? I know City got a game in hand, but 8 points.
I think what are they ahead of us? They're a long way. I think we have 2 games.
No, it's 8 points. It is 8 points.
But ahead of us, though, I think it's a long way. I think we have 2 games on Arsenal, to be fair, though. We closed the gap a little bit.
We've got 1 game in hand over City. We got 2 games less than Arsenal, but
But how far are Arsenal ahead of us?
19 points.
Yeah, so not okay. That can drop to what sort of 13 points, but still, and that's not to look at any title race. But yeah, Arsenal. Look, who knows what can happen? Obviously, you lose 2 games, anything can happen. But ultimately, you
I
look at
gotta
it now.
say, though,
They've won the league.
if they pull this off, full credit to Arteta, man. Honestly, because with all due respect, like, not only would he have managed to do it, but that squad is shit, mate. I look at that squad of players and I just don't understand it. But full credit, mate. He's getting a tune out of all those players. He's got them playing above their capability.
Look, I completely agree. I think the answer to this question is Arsenal, but I want to sort of just take a step back and encapsulate everything. Who has the better season? Arsenal winning a Premier League or Erik ten Hag and Man United winning three cups?
Ooh.
Look, it's Arsenal, the Premier League, but ultimately 3 cups in terms of the job. Now, obviously, Arsenal
trophies are trophies, right? And 3 trophies is more than 1 trophy. But look, I'd be a hypocrite.
But given the job Erik ten Hag has had when he arrived,
given it's his first season, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a fantastic job.
It's not to celebrate, it's not to take away from Arsenal, but
no, not at all, right? But if you consider it's Ten Hag's first season, he had a lot. He had a lot of ground to make up. This team came 6th last season, so if he manages to keep
20th
United
in August after the first 2 defeats,
yeah, and again that shows character. And the thing with Ten Hag, when we look back on this season, I think that what will be so interesting with Ten Hag is when he leaves Manchester United, the story will always start with he lost 4-0 at Brentford. He lost his first 2 games. And the thing is, the room for error this season has been so great, and he's managed to come out on the positive side every time. Harry Maguire, Cristiano Ronaldo, losing 4-0 at Brentford. He lost his first 2 games of the season.
I sort of know what you mean, but clarify a little bit in terms of sort of the room was great for error.
Yeah, the room was great for error. He could have gotten, if the potential for those things to derail our season was so high. Yeah. You upset Maguire, you upset the dressing room. Okay, yeah. Ronaldo, obviously, there's a lot of those players look up to him. Obviously, Garnacho copied everything Ronaldo did, wanted to brush his teeth with him, wanted to take a dump with him. Everything Ronaldo was doing, Garnacho wanted to be there. The room for error was so great, particularly Ronaldo, because he walked off. He refused to come onto the pitch. He then integrated him back into the playing group, started him. Then he goes on national TV. He created a situation where he not only did he pull off a masterstroke, he gave Ronaldo the rope to hang himself with. And
that's what I always went back to with the Ronaldo situation. It sounded like I was always defending Ronaldo in regards to this. Erik ten Hag could only do it. The end goal for Manchester United to move forward in regards to that situation was Ronaldo had to leave the club. Now, obviously, there was a contract situation. Ronaldo just couldn't leave with that contract. United had to force a way to either sell him, which obviously no buying club was going to buy Ronaldo. United had to force a way to get out of that contract. And the only way to do that was to, as I say, Erik ten Hag give Ronaldo that rope to sort of unfortunately hang himself. Now, Erik ten Hag, that was the only thing he had to do. That was for the benefit of the club, which was...
We mean that metaphorically, by the way, guys.
Yeah, 100% the right thing to do by Erik ten Hag. But ultimately, I also thought it was the right thing to do. But with that came short-term pain. And 1 or 2, maybe against Newcastle, subbing him off. That was the right decision for maybe the long term. But maybe in terms of that game, maybe we get 3 points if it wasn't Marcus Rashford on the end of that cross. So there were sort of prices to pay with that deal in of Cristiano Ronaldo. But ultimately, it had to be done for the benefit of the club. So it was that thing as a fan where, I do see long-term vision, but could we have an extra goal? Could we have 3 points this week? And ultimately, that's why Erik ten Hag is paid to be the manager. And we pay to watch. That is one of those things. But Andy here, good to see you, mate. As always, check out Arsenal's run-in. I don't want to say this, but City could be favourites. I don't want to put Arsenal in Leicester's category, but it just feels like Leicester. I see Arsenal. I agree with Andy looking at Arsenal's run-in and think, they'll drop points. I said the same thing about Leicester, and I've been saying the same thing about Arsenal all season. They've done well, but they'll drop points now. They'll start to fade away now. It's 10 games to go, almost 10 games to go. They're not going to fade away if they're not fading away yet. We had this same thing with Leicester City. So I agree with Andy looking at Arsenal's run-in. And look, there are some very tricky ties in there, obviously. And City, the one thing we have seen from them over the years is they can deal with these run-ins. But I've come to terms with look, I wouldn't say Arsenal have their name on the trophy, but my God, they're close. I think I'd never like using the term bottle in terms of, they bottled this, they bottled that. I don't like using that in regards to football. But so Arsenal won't have bottled this if they lose it from here, but my God, it'll be close. I think it's very close to they've nailed this on.
The really interesting thing about Manchester City this season is they've got Erling Haaland up front, who has scored over 30 goals this season. And they're not as good as they were last season. And it reeks of Manchester United with Ruud van Nistelrooy. It really does. I think they've brought him in thinking he'll be the point of difference for the Champions League, the Premier League, etc. I think they've gone backwards with Erling Haaland in that team. He doesn't complement their style of football. Now, of course, there'll be room for change on that, and that's a challenge for Guardiola. He needs to tweak how he plays when you've got someone.
Do you think Erling Haaland is the first sign of potentially looking past Pep Guardiola in regards to City signing him rather than Pep Guardiola?
I wouldn't think so. I think there was a clear need for a number 9. They wanted Harry Kane 12 months prior. Yeah. And the thing is, if you put Harry Kane in that Manchester City side, I think they're double the team. Yeah. I really do, because he's a good football. That's the thing. And again, I know you and I particularly, we harp on this point a fair bit, but it is important. Someone who is a good goal scorer isn't necessarily a good footballer. And there's differences in that. And Harry Kane might not score as many goals as Erling Haaland, but he's a much better footballer. And that the way that City play in tight areas with the ball, quick movement, they kill teams because they frustrate you with the ball. With Erling Haaland, he's always looking to get in behind. So when you're looking to get in behind, your risk of losing that ball is greater. It's different. And I think Guardiola struggled with that a little bit.
Yeah, no, so I always made this point. When Jose Mourinho took over Tottenham, I just seemed to be watching more Tottenham, and Harry Kane I always just thought was a good striker. Watching Harry Kane closely, he's world class. He's a brilliant footballer. Now, obviously, we throw a lot of baggage at Harry Kane in regards to no trophies and Tottenham, all this. Ultimately, you watch him play, he's absolutely brilliant. I would love to see him in a Man United shirt. We can have a genuine discussion about the business and is it worth it? Of course, that's a definite discussion to have in regards to if it's too much money. But just the footballer, if you're playing a game of FIFA, bringing Harry Kane into this team at the moment, a fit and available Harry Kane over potentially Anthony Martial, not available, or Weghorst available, but not good enough. I think Harry Kane, I don't want to say like Robin Van Persie comes in and wins us the title, but if United continue to progress and we just add that cherry on the cake in Harry Kane, you've got to say if a good season would result in a Premier League title next season.
I think there's a good chance of that. It's really interesting. Like Adam McCullough put out, it was on Stretford Paddock that Joe asked Adam a question: who's been Manchester United's best striker over the last decade?
Yeah, it's not wrong.
Well, it's not wrong. And that's I think people misconstrue the defense of Martial. And, Adam and I obviously had this joke in Melbourne about being co-founders of Martial FC. But the thing is, like, I think Adam understands where I'm coming from as well in this. And you do as well, Tom, in the sense that if you look at the pure, I think it's interesting. I think if you ask Ten Hag, what is your perfect number 9? I actually think he says Martial. I think because if you look at in terms of all aspects that go into a footballer, back to goal, dribble, pace, in the ability in the air, Martial's got it all. He's got what Kane's got, but he doesn't score goals as consistently. He's not as fit, but he's quicker and he's a better dribbler.
The fit is the thing. It's what it comes down to, unfortunately, for any player. Yeah, you look at great players we've had in our past. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Wes Brown. Wes Brown was one of the co-hosts. Wes Brown at Manchester United. Maybe some of the people obviously remember in the live chat. Look, injury sort of ruined. No, I wouldn't say ruined his career. He had a great career at Manchester United. Won countless things. Won the lot at Manchester United. Was involved in the treble as well. But ultimately, and maybe obviously, as sort of great players in front of him in terms of Rio Ferdinand came into the club. He had Jaap Stam, Ronnie Johnson, etc. But ultimately, Wes Brown, if he wasn't injured, would be having injured so often, would be having a far different discussion about him. And it's off the back of unfortunately not being able to stay as fit as he would have liked. And look, that's the case for a lot of players. It's one of those things. But Anthony Martial, ultimately, Wes Brown sort of found his way through and sort of ended up having a very successful time at United. Obviously, for the club, it was obviously far easier to be successful. Anthony Martial's find himself in a situation where it's in a bit of a turmoil sort of stage for the club, so he doesn't get those plaudits. But I think, unfortunately for Martial, the difference compared to Wes Brown, if I can put them in the same category, is it didn't cost Wes Brown his Man United career. I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, this could cost Anthony Martial his United career.
And I think if United were if Manchester United now were where Manchester United were in the noughties, I think there is a future for Martial, because you can afford to ride his injury record and have him as a backup. But United really need someone who's first choice at the moment. And
Do you think there, in regards to you talk about the noughties and Anthony Martial, so take Wes Brown out of the discussion, let's look at strikers. You mentioned sort of backup strikers a few minutes ago in regards to Berbatov, Chicharito, etc., Teddy Sheringham, Solskjaer. Would we be having a different discussion in regards to back then? You had 4 strikers because you always had 2, then 2 on the bench. Now in the modern game, you have 1 striker. So, okay, your 1 striker is your number 1. Your second striker, who used to be world class, is now your plan B striker. So I'm just thinking, if Anthony Martial was potentially that second striker and not sort of relied upon, would be having a different view of him?
I don't think so. I actually think if Manchester United bought Harry Kane and Martial's the backup, I'd be over the moon with that. I really would. But there's just something that's nagging in the back of my head that says it's over for Martial. I think he really had to get it right this season. And
it's been crazy when you look at him. He won't get his testimonial. But what's it? 2023 now. He joined in 2015.
15, yeah.
He's been here a while, and that changes the discussion, because we think, in my mind, I still see Anthony Martial as a young striker. He's been here since 2015.
How old is Martial now? He's 27.
Yeah, okay, and still, look, in my opinion, that's a young striker. Not a young striker, but he's still got years ahead of him. A lot of people disagree.
He will go to another club and smash it. I have no doubt. I could see that for him. But I think playing at the top level just won't work for him, unfortunately.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, no, look, I tend to agree there. Andy here's saying, have you watched the latest on Webby and O'Neill interview Skulls? I haven't seen that. I am subscribed, so I'll go and give that a watch soon. We'll have to get Webby back on. Webby was obviously on. When was he on? He was on just before Ronaldo's return. He was on the.
I think we're in lockdown.
Yeah, it was no. I'm not sure. I remember it was just before Ronaldo's return. Ronaldo. So we might have been in lockdown here. England, we were filling out stadiums. We couldn't go 2 kilometres from our house. But you'll have to get Webby back on. But look, before we do wrap up, Larry, in regards to, we've stayed 50 minutes staying clear of Qatar, Sir Jim and the Glazers. But just the latest, it's weirdly, I don't know weirdly, or this is quite standard in regards to how this news sort of trickles from time to time. A little bit quiet around the news. And is that maybe give you confidence that there's no real news out there? Or is it kind of, hang on,
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's interesting. Well, the Glazers haven't taken any dividends out. That talks to there's a sale that could potentially happen. Manchester United recorded a profit this quarter, £6 million. Good. It sounds to I think no news is good news. I think that suggests there's some due diligence going on in the background. I think we'll hear news of a sale in the next 2 weeks or so. I think it happens by the end of April. If it's going to happen, it happens by April. It has to.
You say it has to, and look, I agree, but it has to.
But it does have to. Like literally, it has to happen because so once you agree and you sign all the papers, there's then a handover process. It's man, these things take time.
But that's what you mean. You say has to, but why has to? Like, what deadline are the Glazers on?
Well, so generally in business, you work in financial years. Yeah. So if you're a new owner, you need to be under the door by 1 July. And then if you're thinking ahead of the next season, work for transfers happens well before that. So Manchester United, whatever transfer plans they have, like we've already seen some reports planning around FFP for Manchester United. I think if it was Qatari or even Jim Ratcliffe, to be fair, I think that might enhance United's position in the market a little bit. So it'll hurt the club if the Glazers are still in limbo. So I think it needs to happen in the next month.
It needs to happen for my sanity. I want to see it happen. And obviously, I speak for all Manchester United fans there, of course. But hopefully everyone did enjoy that. Please do leave a like on the video. That'd be very much appreciated. If you are new, hit that subscribe button. And Larry, nothing else I've forgotten on this Friday night?
I'm going to say one thing. Only because he's a great bloke, Laurie Whitwell, and I feel like it's needed to be said. He came out with an article about Mason Greenwood. And if anyone ever bothered to read a full article as opposed to reading headlines or people's snippets of an article, you would understand he criticized Mason and basically highlighted he's been a bit of a dickhead since he was a teenager. Since he was 10 years old, basically, right? And then you go online and you see people saying Laurie Whitwell is doing positive PR, so Mason Greenwood can become a Manchester United player. For the love of God, I beg anyone, read the full article of anything before you start jumping to conclusions. That bloke worked so hard to get those stories out there, literally told me himself. And then you got people saying he's spinning and is Mason Greenwood's PR man. They're like the impact it has on these guys. They're human beings too. He's a top journalist making sure that we get all the facts. Just be mindful before you read crap on Twitter. Please.
Even for the quotes from me, which I completely agree, but even me reading the quotes that are circulating on Twitter, it was anything but PR for Mason Greenwood. And I just think, I don't know how it got sort of thrown into
because people read the bits where it was like, there's been debate about how Mason might be integrated back into the squad, and then people, Laurie Whitwell's trying to,
I'll say that
Mason returns. That's just not what's happening. The reality is Manchester United need to weigh up if that's a possibility.
We've had disagreements, but off the back of that article, look, I agree. We've had not disagreements, sort of seen different sides of it. After that article and after sort of information has come to light, current stance on prediction in regards to Mason Greenwood's future?
My hunch is they'll pay out his contract. I think they'll come to a point where
overnight, or they'll let it ride out.
It's really hard, mate, because the thing is, I think there is a desire from people within the club to see him stay. I think that's clear. I don't think so. I think there is, mate. I do. I'm reading it was actually up about 10. I think I saw it about an hour ago. Give me a moment. I'll just bring it up. And the thing that makes me say that is all the reports around Mason at the moment are there are people within the club who want to entertain the idea of bringing him back, but I think that's the footballer. I don't think it's him, right? There's the ability thing. Like you and I are sitting here talking about, and again, I'm trying to be diplomatic about this because I have feelings about what I think he did, and ultimately that's the number one thing in my head, and it's the reason why I don't personally want to see him play for Manchester United again. But I'm trying to remove that, and I'm trying to look at it as, if you look at the footballer, the ability of the guy before all of this happened, good strikers are very hard to come by, and he has an ability to score goals when he was 18, his first season as a full-time in Manchester United's team, he scored 17 goals as a 17/18-year-old. He scored 17 goals in his first season. And again, none of that matters in the grand scheme of things. When you think of what we think he's been accused of doing, but you can't buy talent like that. It's rare, and I think that's why it's even being entertained. If he was a bum of a footballer, no one's talking about
now with Harry Kane.
Sorry?
Manchester United can now buy that with Harry Kane.
Yeah, I know, but one costs you 100 million, one's already there, and one's 21 years of it.
It can be bought. I know. I agree with your statement. I agree. It's just... I just go back to what Manchester United is, and we have all these discussions, what it means to everyone as fans around the world. And yes, 3 points and trophies are very important, but Manchester United is more than that. And I think Manchester United have a responsibility here as well, especially, let's just throw a hypothetical where Qatar to take over Manchester United. We're talking about potential sports washing and PR and sort of motives and sort of lines coming out from Qatar and the Middle East. Ultimately, a huge push Qatar will have is in regards to the promotion of the women's team. They can't promote the women's team and push the women's team off the back of a Women's World Cup and a successful season for the team and then throw Mason Greenwood back in. I simply don't think from a PR point of view Qatar do that. And ultimately, I think potentially the right decision. But look.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult only because when you look in Australia with similar players in different codes, granted, who have been charged with similar offences and either had the charges dropped or been acquitted, they've been integrated back in. So Manchester United would be setting precedent if they decide to let him go, and not one that I oppose, but it will be interesting from an employment law perspective. And then if there's a financial settlement, I think where this gets complicated, again, if you find law, I don't
know. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if it was the Laurie Whitwell interview potentially. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be. Still $8 million left on his contract in regards to him potentially being paid out.
It wasn't from The Athletic.
Okay.
I don't remember the journalist's name.
And
sorry.
again, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's accurate, but look, for United, they can do that, but ultimately, that's still huge money.
Well, 8 million for no reason, right? Like this isn't 8 million. It's like paying $2,000 for a counterfeit watch, or like, you know what I mean? Like you're paying for nothing. It's lost money. You put your 50,000 on red, and black came up. Manchester United have nothing to gain here, and that's the thing. Like, if it's 8 million to buy a player, you can justify it. But when it's $8 million to solve nothing, it's hard. And with Qatar, it's interesting. I wonder, because they have so much money, maybe it actually dilutes the impact, because they don't need the sponsorship money. They can they'll ride out any negative PR. Whereas I think if it was Jim Ratcliffe, if it's the Glazers, maybe you can't afford that. So it's maybe you just pay him in the background and don't integrate him.
I think this is one of those ones where, look, it is such a financial mess and financial situation that will be, unfortunately, in terms of the way, whatever our view of it is, that will be one of the deciding factors, mainly the deciding factor, the financials of it. But ultimately, as Manchester United, the global brand and sort of size of the club that it is, it's one of those things. Forget the financials. This is a statement decision in terms of, okay, forget what it means. Okay, what does this mean moving forward for football, for Manchester United in general? And I think it'll be more of a statement decision rather than a footballing decision.
I don't think they'll pay out his contract, because that insinuates Mason's guilty, and that will hurt his brand. I mean, his brand's already tarnished. It's tarnished, but I think it almost doubles down on that.
Yeah.
I think Mason they'll either go all in and integrate him back in, or they'll sell him. And I think it'll probably go toward the latter.
And I think this is not me wanting the best for Mason Greenwood or anything, but just in terms of, okay, second chance or whatever the situation was used towards Mason Greenwood, it's best for him. I don't think being at Manchester United is good for him. I think he needs to go have a career elsewhere, whether that be in Turkey or elsewhere, I don't know.
Well, if you follow that report, he's desperate to get back to Manchester United. It's interesting. I'm out of nothing else other than setting precedent in world sport. I'm so curious to see how this goes. Like when you take the emotion out, it will dead set be precedent setting. So I'm watching with intrigue, Tom.
Well, if you want to continue to watch our inside into, or not inside, but our opinions on it, please do make sure you hit that subscribe button. Please do leave a like on the video and comment below all your thoughts on all things Man United, Newcastle, Qatar, Mason Greenwood, anything else. We can have a discussion in the comments below. And Larry and I will be back Monday night, UK. I don't think we'll go live. Actually, I think I had to put my hands up, Larry. I got a long day at work on Monday. I have a feeling I might call in a sickie in regards to Monday morning, 1:30. I might watch this on delay.
I really hope you got no one at work who watches this.
Well, no, I have to look around my schedule and see who I'm going to potentially bump into, and I need to send them maybe one or two messages to avoid eye contact. But I think I might actually be watching this one on delay. One of the handful of times I do this throughout a season. But I do have the afternoon off on Monday. So I think when I get home mid-afternoon, I'll sit down and watch the match. So Monday night Australian time, Monday morning UK time. Do join us for the review. Fingers crossed we are celebrating a victory against Newcastle and obviously securing our spot in the top four. But Larry, it's been a pleasure sharing a drink with you and everyone in the live chat. Hope everyone has a good weekend and it results in 3 points on the weekend. Until then, we'll chat to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.